You left Zero.
You do have the hard-hitting questions. This is sick. You really laying out. Let it go, girl.
It's why leave Zero after 13 years, right?
I don't know.
Something like that.
I wasn't doing
long time.
Yeah, it was 13 years.
13 years.
That was what was the top graphic. It said 13 years.
13 years, the top graphic.
That was last board.
Why did you leave?
I think there was I'm sure there's
Jamie's like, yeah, let's hear it.
Let's hear it.
well, I'm sure there's two different sides of it, right? I felt like there was a like we were growing apart in a lot of different ways, and I think in hindsight there was a lot of a dynamic shift in my life as a dude, and like you kind of have your home and then you stray from home to kind of figure out yourself, and because I've just always been under this camp, you know, and like the mentorship, and you know, it's just always been this reality, right? And then I went and I started doing like contests and all these things that weren't the priority of Zero necessarily, you know?
Okay.
And so, and that got very, very consuming. The contest thing got like a bit too much consuming.
What are we talking about? The street leagues and
Yeah,
different things?
like because jam style contests are different. But with the street league contests, specifically like any run contest, or like you have a number of goes and you have to put up scores, was very, very difficult for me. So I had to hyper focus on it and like really figure out how I could like beat the game in a way. And that became such a priority that it actually made me kind of a pain in the ass to have on the team in a lot of ways, because if they're on tour, I've got to fly in and fly out. Kelly probably knows all about this. You have to fly in to a street league from tour and then fly back to the tour from a street league, because there were a billion stops at that point.
But that's in your own mind, though, or is that something that Jamie, like, would
real.
you agree with him?
No,
That he's a pain in the ass?
Yes.
Because,
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
Totally.
Because you got...
It's disruptive.
So there's a few things.
Okay.
A few things. One is we were going into some tough times during this time.
Got you.
So what we were living was like we were having like camping trips. The budget was cut to nothing, and we're going on camping trips. And this dude's flying out of bougie hotels and coming in to slum it with the Zero team for a week.
Uh-huh.
And his new contract, or his new, you know, and I'm communicating with an agent about his time. And then the agent is telling me that he only has 7 days this summer that he can give to Zero.
Oh, you're dealing with,
Yeah.
you're not even dealing with Chris anymore.
He's
Wow.
He's a business, and this is the peak of his career, and he's being pulled in all these different directions. And Zero is just one more person putting in a request for his time.
Wow.
So I agree with him that it was mutual, in the sense that he is focused on another aspect of his career that is not conducive to what we were doing with Zero. So I wouldn't say a pain in the ass, but it is difficult to go to a demo and not have your biggest dude at the demo.
True.
And then to have him come in and only have a limited amount of days, and then him also feel like, what the hell, why are we slumming it so hard? I'm like one of the biggest names in skateboarding. And he wouldn't say it exactly that way, but
Right.
that feeling was felt. You know,
Okay.
he definitely was leaving some bougie hotels and coming, and we're like, we don't know where we're camping tonight, and we're gonna renegade this campsite, and then we're gonna get kicked out first thing in the morning. And it was hectic. That
Sure.
that actually happened, but
Okay.
at any rate,
That was hectic.
It was actually
I'm sure anybody would be like this.
Yeah, yeah. It
going
was
from the Ritz-Carlton to getting kicked out of a campsite.
yeah, it was pretty harsh.
Like I can definitely do the slumming trips. This one was pretty buck.
But at this time, we were growing apart because we didn't have our normal rapport. We weren't filming video parts together. We weren't spending the time in the van. It's just like any relationship. If you're not spending time together,
Yeah, it's tough.
it's growing apart. You know, and he still was our biggest guy, and we were committing the most funds to him. Like, he was our highest paid team rider
Right.
by a long shot, and we're getting the least from him than any other team rider. So it's starting to make less sense for Zero. And then, him going on these bullshit camping trips that we're getting kicked out of campsites is making less sense for him. And I felt like the nail in the coffin is when the company was struggling and I was completely wrapped up in trying to keep the train on the tracks. I signed a license deal with Dwindle and didn't even call him to tell him. That's where our relationship was. And so I remember getting a call from him going, dude, I just found out about this through the industry. Is this real? Did you do this? Do I not? And that was the end of the end.
That was it.
And for me, I was, my communication with Cole wasn't so frequent that he was the first person on my mind. That's my fault. You know what I mean? He still was the biggest guy on Zero at the time, and I should have had a priority list, and his name been near the top of the list.
Also, I think it kind of sucks too that like here you guys were like the best of friends communicating, but now you're going through an agent.
Totally. And that's like,
can't even talk to your buddy.
Well, that's the thing too. Like that happened like gradually that I didn't notice it was happening because my brain was so wrapped up with all the places I was being pulled that if there was anything other than just like figuring out how to do hard tricks first try, it went to somebody else. Like somebody else deal with it. Emails, somebody else deal with it. Like everything, somebody else deal with it. I'm spread too thin.
Phone calls?
I would take phone calls. I do interviews and stuff like that, but it was like
You were
I couldn't commit to anything. So if
Right.
you told me anything, I felt like Bilbo Baggins, like butter spread over too much bread.
Yeah.
So
I don't know what that reference means.
I don't know either, but I like it.
Yeah, but the people that get it, they'll get it. Like, that's my guy.
So I almost feel like that breakup was mutual at that point.
I think it was. I mean,
Yeah.
we couldn't, and to be honest, Zero was getting really small, and his salary was not small. And so, there was two parts. One was like me calling his agent and saying, hey, we're having a tough time paying Cole. Can we try to potentially revisit how we pay him and how we come up with the dollar amount? And we were trying to figure out if we could do quick strike of boards and pay him a different royalty on the website. And like, we were trying to get creative. I was trying to get creative to get him the same dollar amount, but get there in a different way. But then not have it all in the company that if he doesn't sell that many boards each month, we have a guarantee that's way beyond what we're capable of paying. So it was another scenario where there was a contract in place. It was a 5-year contract. We were at like year 3.5. And I had, due to the height of his career, I had offered him a stock option in Zero, which would have been if we ever sold the company, he would get 10% of the revenue from the sale. At this point, when we were talking about this, there was a real concept that we would sell the company someday. But I didn't see this.
This is 3 years before what we're talking about right now.
No. So it wasn't at the beginning of his contract. It was like a year into his contract.
Okay.
We put in an ownership. It was kind of like a bonus clause that if we ever sell the company, because he had the potential to get ownership elsewhere at this point because he was at the peak of his career. And so we're like, how do we make all this work? And to make it work, it was a separate agreement to his 5-year deal.
Okay.
But it was like, in order to make it all work, there had to be some incentive for him to stay on Zero that would have been similar to what he would be offered if he started something.
Yeah, and ownership is great.
Ownership is only great if you sell the company.
Yeah.
True. That is definitely true.
Right.
But there was a hope to sell the company because I knew I couldn't do it forever at this point, and I didn't know what the future held. But then when the bottom fell out, it didn't make sense to sell it for pennies on the dollar.
Right.
So by the time we're talking about his contract, the scenario of me ever selling the company for something that's going to give him a payday is not happening. So the agreement was let him out 1.5 years early to his contract, and then we get rid of the 10%.
Oh, you would dissolve that.
Yeah, dissolve the 10% phantom stock
Okay.
that equals a bonus. So that was dissolved, and that's basically how we handled it. And
Got you.
to be honest, it was sad, but at the same time, it was
Relieving?
fairly obvious. Yeah, and relieving, but it was obvious for both of us that we needed a break and that he needed to go do his own thing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was not. There wasn't like hard feelings, but it wasn't like we were hanging out the next
So
week.
it wasn't. It was tough though, no? Or was it just at that point in time where you're just like, I got to go do my own thing?
No,
I mean, every breakup's tough, right? But
totally. Totally. But like, yeah, it was definitely it was a weird feeling, but it was also a weird time in like the skate thing, like I said, with the contest being so like stretching me too thin. It was
Because we're talking like
it's almost like you didn't-
2014-ish.
It's almost like it's almost like after a breakup, you try to stay busy, so you don't think about the breakup.
distraction.
Yeah, like I was distracted. So like even if there were feelings of being like, man, you know, that's kind of home. It always felt like home too. You know, it always felt like a break from home because it was like I can't get away from Zero because Zero and I are one and the same to everybody. So like
Yeah.
and it was pretty funny because when I got back on Zero, there were people that were like what, he wasn't on, like they didn't even know like at all, like it's just because if they didn't see any announcement and didn't pay close attention, they would just see my skating and go
Zero.
zero.
Yeah.
100%.